I would be if he wanted to buy it, yeah. I'd like Larry to buy it too. I have the right to make a deal. So the deal I'm thinking about, Larry, let's negotiate in front of the media. The deal I think is this, and I've met with owners of TikTok, the big owners. It's worthless if it doesn't get a permit.
President Trump there speaking about the potential sale of TikTok from parent company ByteDance. Joining us now is someone who has been in the hunt for TikTok longer than most. Shark Tank investor Kevin O'Leary made a formal offer to buy TikTok earlier this month. Along with billionaire Frank McCourt, O'Leary had even met with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He joins us now. Great to have you with us, Kevin. First of all, what do you think of this new competition?
I think there's a lot of interest in TikTok. It's a really interesting asset. We know from the court order that has been issued both by Congress on a bipartisan basis, and then most recently, just a week ago, by the Supreme Court in a unique 9-0, very definitive decision, where they further defined the issues and the decision around non-use of any Chinese algorithm. So whoever the buyer is, they have to provide a new tech stack, completely new tech stack, because the Supreme Court order does not allow for the use of the algorithm. So a lot of these bids make the assumption that they're going to fork the code, as it's called, or form a joint venture with China and remove any of the spyware. That's not going to be allowed. It's prohibited by the Supreme Court order. So there's a lot of speculation, and I understand that. There's in a void of information, you're going to get speculation, but you have to go back to the original order and the new Supreme Court judgment to determine what you can actually do. And so if you're going to buy TikTok according to the rules of Congress and the Supreme Court, you're not buying the algorithm. And so far as I know, the only offer that's been made to the company, banker to banker, is the McCourt-O'Leary offer that specifically dictates that we will not buy or require the algorithm at all. Not one single line of the 5 billion lines of code. We cannot buy it, we don't want it, and we won't purchase it as per the order of the Supreme Court.
And your bid is $20 billion in cash. You think that TikTok is worth that even without that algorithm?
Well, the math is, obviously there's going to be flexibility in pricing, but the secondary market right now for the entire TikTok, and there's been blocks of stock trading on the secondary markets, about $230 billion. TikTok US represents about 8% of the aggregate global TikTok. So the numbers come in sort of around the $20 billion number. That's what the market's paying right now. And that includes the algorithm. So we're purchasing without the algorithm. So we think that's a reasonable offer. And, there'll be lots of other speculations, but at the end of the day, the company has to abide by the order of Congress. And if it's going to stay on in the United States, has to divest itself out of Chinese control.
When you're saying there's flexibility in price, are you thinking that perhaps you could up even that offer given the new competition, or given that the competition is not necessarily considering not offering or not taking the algorithm, that you'll actually not have to compete that hard?
Well, we're just looking at the price that the stock actually trades at. So, I think, deciding what the final price is total speculation as well. Anybody can put any price out they want, but the last time these shares traded, it was around a $230 billion market cap. So, this is not rocket science. Anybody can see it as public information. So we think the price is around $20 billion for TikTok USA, particularly when you have to rebuild the tech stack from scratch. That's a fairly expensive endeavor on its own.
You've already spoken to President Trump. What are the conversations like right now? What do you expect to see, given that we have heard him talk about Elon Musk, talk about Ellison as well? What does that mean in terms of also sources telling us that potentially China would like Elon Musk to purchase it?
Yeah, listen, I think there's a lot of speculation. I would imagine Elon Musk would run into antitrust issues because he already owns X, or formerly TikTok. Larry Ellison and Oracle once owned a piece of ByteDance, I believe, and they divested of it already because they're a large service provider. They may want an arm's length transaction So they're not involved with the actual operating of the app. But all of these things are speculations. So, the only thing we do is we stay focused on our bid, the merits it has. We're not involved. We have no conflict of interest. We're not involved in an existing social media platform. And in addition to that, most of the revenue in TikTok US comes from small businesses that are basically Shark Tank companies. They all know me, about 7 million small businesses. I think I'm well trusted by them, and I've offered them a deal as well, saying, why don't you invest beside me in equity crowdfunding? I've set that up at wonderfultiktok.com. We're working with the Jobs Act. The first 75 million is available on a first serve, first come basis. So I think we have a lot of attractive elements to our offer, and certainly we're not conflicted in any way, and we have the cash. So, we'll see what happens. It's anybody's guess. I think it'll happen pretty quickly, though, because at the end of the day, the 270-day period ended, and so we're in an interesting space right now, waiting to see what happens. Perhaps this executive order will buy 75 days, but nobody really knows. That's not an option in the existing law, so we'll just see what happens.
Would your deal be able to make that deal within that timeline?
I think we could close it in 90 days. Yeah, and I think, it depends what lawyer you talk to, a congressional lawyer. We think that if an offer is signed back by ByteDance, it does trigger a 90-day period where the app could stay lit up while the parties negotiate final terms. That was in the original order that was passed by Congress on a bipartisan basis. A lot of what's happening now is kind of uncharted territory, because officially there is no option to keep it's actually technically banned, because as of midnight on the 19th, there was no sign back, and therefore there's no option to extend.
So what do you think of the structure that the deal could take as well, given that President Trump has mentioned a potential joint venture with the U.S. government? I mean, can you sort of give us an understanding of what the president might mean by 50% ownership by the U.S. government? And is that something that you could entertain?
Well, it's 100% Trump's deal. I mean, there's no question. It's now, in his administration. The law does not permit for that. So the law says, and maybe they'll change that law, who knows, but it doesn't provide for any partnership on the technology with China. Now, could China have a minority position, a non-control position? Maybe. That also has to be contemplated by Congress. At the end of the day, what's unique about this deal, there's an oversight from Congress to whatever agencies they deem. So they're going to be looking at these various offers and which ones they like that provide for national security. That's the reason TikTok's in this situation. It got to a place where Congress decided it was a national security threat and told China they had to divest of it. And so really, with the secret golden share structure of Chinese companies, that decision is Xi's alone, and he will decide what he's going to do, and that's a discussion he's having with Trump. Any bidder is going to have to work with whatever President Trump decides. So, if there's going to be a portion of this owned by the U.S. government or by the Chinese government, it will have to be under the law passed by Congress, unless they amend that law. But who knows? That's what I mean. It's a lot of these are unknown, and it's a very interesting transaction right now.
Of course, there's a dynamic of President Trump's backing here, but there's also the dynamic that Beijing needs to like the deal that they see. You've worked with Beijing for over 2 decades. What do you think will be appealing to the leadership there?
Well, they have an option. They can do what they did in India in 2020 and just shut it off. That's probably not that attractive an outcome, and I'll tell you why. China wants to be a part of the G7, G20, and certainly wants to grow its economy and attract capital globally like any large economy would. And so if all of a sudden you erase 20, 30, 40 billion dollars worth of value overnight just because you want to turn it off, that's probably not a great outcome for what the future fundraising of China looks like, because that means at any time another company, not necessarily ByteDance, the same thing could happen to you. So investors may take pause in investing in the future of China if that was to be the case. So I'm thinking that's a little unlikely in this case. There's just too much money on the table, and why give up whatever the value of TikTok USA is? And certainly you don't want to signal to other investors that you're happy to just shut it down and lose, whatever it is, 20, 30, $40 billion. That's a tough pill to swallow. So, but I don't know what she's going to do. Nobody does. This is all speculation, and we're waiting to see. But really, it's a narrative between Trump and Xi that will determine how this works. Obviously, the company can't negotiate on its own. It looks like, because they don't hold the golden share that all Chinese companies have to issue to the CCP.
When it comes to the interests of the millions of TikTok users, why would your bid be better than others?
Well, we offer something rather interesting. We envision a different format in terms of data ownership. We're going to give the ownership back to the user. They will determine when and if they want to participate in advertising. And if they do, we're going to share some of that revenue with them. It's a unique format. So in other words, you would say, okay, look, I'm very interested in watches, as I am. I wear 2 watches. I love watches. I like to be advertised every new model. I like to learn everything I can. I'm very interested in all that content. And if you're going to advertise watch companies and watch products to me, let me share in that income, which is a unique option. Secondly, we're going to provide interoperability with other social media sites. So if you're posting on X, you can populate everything we've got on TikTok. It's no different than in years past with telco companies. In the beginning, there were baby bells in the United States, and you couldn't actually call one person from Texas to California because there's 2 operators. And then when they passed the Telco Act, they allowed for the owner, the user, to actually keep their number and transfer it across different providers. We envision the same thing with this new version of TikTok on our tech stack, is to allow you to decide you own the content, you own your relationships, you decide when and if you want to monetize it, and you can move between social media
Right.
platforms just like you can move your phone number across different providers, whether it be Verizon or AT&T. Same idea for the new TikTok.
Given what you're telling us about the potential of TikTok and how it could evolve, I know that you've talked about $20 billion being the right number here, but how much higher would you be willing to go?
Well, that's sheer speculation. I mean, it depends on what the market is and what the deal looks like. Nobody's been in negotiations yet at all. It doesn't matter which, ours is the only registered bid so far that's on the table. There may be others, but we don't know what that deal is going to look like yet, and nobody does. So we'll just wait and see. But again, I'm just using public information of the last time the company traded shares, and you can buy ByteDance shares on the secondary market for a valuation currently of around 230 billion. And again, as I mentioned earlier, TikTok USA is worth 8%, so you kind of get to a $20 billion number. But it's a number, and we'll see what happens.
Right.